Hi, listeners. Today on our show, we have Megan Carolan. Megan is the Assistant Director for Policy Research at ICS. She will help direct ICS research on early childhood policies, as well as support its technical assistance for Pay for Success jurisdiction. Megan was previously the Policy Research Coordinator at the National Institute for Early Education Research at Rutgers University. She managed the State Preschool Yearbook, National Institute for Early Education Research report on state funding for preschool policy. She also provides technical assistance to states through National Institute for Early Education Research centers on enhancing early learning outcomes, a federal-funded TA center focusing on improving outcomes for children from birth to age 8. Megan holds a Master of Public Policy with a concentration in social policy from the Edward J. Blaustein School at Rutgers University. She graduated magna cum laude from Fairfield University in Connecticut, majoring in sociology and politics. Headquartered in Greenville, South Carolina, the Institute for Child Success, ICS, is an independent, non-partisan, nonprofit research and policy organization dedicated to the success of all young children. Megan will share with us two of her most valuable research findings about infant and toddlers' appropriate development stages for success. Some of the most challenging experience as a new mother. Motherhood tips and strategies for being flexible. She will also share how to apply the Institute for Child Success mission statement, sharing knowledge, conveying stakeholders, embracing solution, and accelerating impact to her own personal life. The benefits of providing technical assistance to have a skilled and stable early childhood workforce. What research show about the preparation of early childhood development programs to provide effective care for all children? The Institute for Child Success works to create a culture and facilitates and fosters the success of all children. Megan, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
It's great. It's so great to have you on the show this afternoon. Let's get started. How did you start working on early education policy research?
Sure. So I was actually going to a graduate program at Rutgers on public policy. And as part of my classroom reading, I was actually learning a lot about the return on investment of early childhood education. It was a class on the economics of poverty and some long-term solutions. At the same time, I saw an opening for a research assistant position at the National Institute for Early Education Research, which is based at Rutgers, New Brunswick. So I put in for the position. And I got it, and it was just so exciting to see what I was learning in the classroom mirrored with what I was doing day to day. I started really just cleaning data and helping out on projects there. But I stayed for about 5 years and eventually led the state preschool yearbook, which every year profiles state funding on publicly funded pre-K programs. It's a really comprehensive resource that I was really proud to work on. So to really just kind of see what I was doing at work, tracking with what I was learning in the classroom. And for 2 years now, I've been with the Institute for Child Success, which is a small think tank focused on early childhood very broadly, education, health, child welfare, really looking at the systems level to figure out how we can best support children and families.
Okay. What are some of the visions that you had for yourself when you started working with the policy research?
I don't think I had a vision at the time. It was not a career path that I ever knew existed before I started working there. It wasn't something that career services had told me about when I was an undergrad, but I sort of stumbled into it, and it couldn't have been a better fit. I've always been interested in education. I considered being a teacher, but realized that I have no classroom management skills. And I've always been really interested in children and families, especially families who are in poverty. So to find a field that really aligned those interests with the skill set that I had, it really felt like a calling to me. But it was kind of exciting to get into a field that's been growing tremendously. In the last 5 to 10 years, the interest in the funding is really grown. And to really find myself there at just the right time, it's been really exciting. So I've been happy to let the vision unfold before me and not have a game plan for what I thought I could contribute, to just see the opportunities as they come.
Okay. How prepared is early childhood workforce to provide effective education and care for all children, especially children in poverty?
I think this is such an important question, and I think you're absolutely right to highlight this particular issues for children in poverty. Every setting is so different, and what every parent wants is so different. For some families, what they're really interested in is a warm and loving environment for their child, and they're much less focused on academics. They just want to know that their child is somewhere where they feel loved every day. So maybe they're interested in a home-based provider who lives down the street from them. Other parents are much more interested in a more academic program, maybe something with a second language or a science focus. And they might wind up giving up some of that warm and fuzzy relationship that other parents value. So it's hard to really say across the board, yes or no. I think we know more than we've ever known about what effective education and care looks like. There are ways to measure it in the classroom, but your gut reaction is a pretty good one too. I think one of the big conversations that the field is tackling right now, and it's hard, is the idea of professionalizing the field. Early childhood educators are incredibly underpaid. They make nowhere near what kindergarten teachers do or elementary school teachers do, but they work very, very hard. I can't imagine being with a room full of 4-year-olds every day. And so as we have a conversation about increasing compensation for that very difficult work, there's also a question of what should be the requirements to be an early childhood educator. A lot of programs that are within schools already require a bachelor's degree in early childhood, but Head Start programs have different requirements. Home-based providers certainly do. And there's a concern that increasing those degree requirements could maybe drive teachers out of the field who are good but can't afford to go back to school, could make it too unaffordable for families, especially low-income families. So how do we ensure that children are getting the best quality care and education, which they deserve, with the needs of the parents and the educators as well? There was a really interesting report put out maybe a year and a half ago now by the National Association for the Education of Young Children, or NAEYC. They asked voters sort of what they thought about this. Should we increase teacher degree requirements first and then start paying them more? Or should we start paying them more so they can afford to go back to school to get that higher degree? And voters were almost exactly split 50-50. So basically, as a society, we haven't decided how to address this problem yet. But there's an understanding that these teachers work incredibly hard and that we need to make sure there's more training and compensation to keep them in the field.
Do you think that the quality of early childhood development programs are improving?
I do. I think it's very difficult to sort of have data across the board to look at with this, and that's what I do is I look at data. But from a gut reaction, we know more than we've ever known before. There's articles coming out every day talking about quality, long-term impacts, evaluations, really trying to look at what happens to these children, excuse me, down the line and not just within that year. The real struggle, though, is making sure that quality is accessible to all children. Mm-hmm. There's this saying in the policy world that programs for the poor are poor programs. And we've seen that happen in a lot of spaces, that the programs that are focused on at-risk children or children living in poverty, they tend to get cut. That's not a strong lobbying effort from families who live in poverty. And so by introducing universal programs that are available to all children, you really get a lot of political support from families across the spectrum who are really going to fight not just to have seats available for their child, but to have quality programming there as well. In terms of programs where parents have to pay to enroll children, quality is not only unaffordable for too many families, it's not even available. We know that high quality centers are more likely to be in high income neighborhoods. So the kids who are maybe starting from a disadvantage, living in maybe a dangerous neighborhood, or parents working multiple jobs to try to make ends meet, they're less likely to have access to the types of programs that we know can help them the most because they're simply unaffordable for parents. So I think the quality is improving. My big concern is making sure that it improves for all children and not just a small set of the population.
Okay, good answer. Now, you mentioned something about a lot of the parents are interested in the quality of the education for their child. Now, what does new research tell us about vocabulary and language processing in the early childhood development?
What we know is that language and vocabulary, oral skills and pre-literacy skills are linked to a lot of long-term benefits. We talk in the field a lot about third grade, and that third grade reading is when children go from learning to read to reading to learn. And that makes sense. If you think back to your own elementary school days, you start having homework that you have to read by yourself. Your homework isn't learning to read anymore. And so children who are behind grade level at third grade really face some uphill challenges. They might be struggling not just with their English homework or their history homework, but even their science homework now, or the word problems in their math book. Mm-hmm. So making sure that children really have a strong grounding in all of those pre-literacy and oral skills is so important. That's not to say that it's easy, but we know that it has trickle benefits throughout not just their childhood, but into adulthood.
Mm-hmm. And what way does this affect their brain, the development of their brain?
The period from birth to age 5 is the fastest period of growth for a child's brain. We often hear the statistic that it's 700 neurons per second are developing in a child's brain. And being a new mother myself, I see this every day now. Mm-hmm. And so introducing those skills as quickly as possible while children are malleable, while those connections are forming, is tremendous. And this is true not just for a primary language or for the English language. We know that the early years are a tremendous opportunity for fostering dual language acquisition for children who come from dual language households, or even for children who maybe are enrolled in a dual language program for a language that's not spoken at home at all, be that Spanish or Chinese or two popular ones. Just children are so much better at learning words and language than adults are, than even teenagers are. It's a real opportunity for early growth that's going to last their lifetime.
Now, when you're teaching children words, do you start with like the whole word, or do you break it down like with the sounds?
Well, so an interesting thing about me is that I actually don't have classroom experience. Okay. So my work is really focused on the policy arena. Mm-hmm. But certainly I think most teachers would tell you it's a combination of learning the sounds and then also the sight words. And I sat down yesterday actually with my niece who's in kindergarten and got to see this in action, that it really is a combination, because there's going to be words maybe in a book. It's a character's name that's made up. It's not a sight word. It's a word that you've never seen before, that hasn't been a word before. And so making sure that children have the skills to decode that on their own and not just rely on what they can recognize.
Now, you mentioned the policy arena. How do you measure your success right now?
That's a really exciting question, and I think my answer would change pretty frequently. In the last 7 years, certainly that I've been in the field, we have seen increased funding for state-funded pre-K programs. Mm-hmm. We've seen improvements in the quality of those programs, and we've seen more children getting seats in those programs, which I consider a tremendous success. On the other hand, we know that so many children are still not getting into those programs in most states. We've seen that Head Start has had a real focus on improving quality standards recently, but that the money might not be there to help all those programs meet those standards. Mm-hmm. So it's making sure, I think, that we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul, that we don't prioritize any one program at the expense of others. And certainly, too, we don't want to see the money for early childhood coming out of elementary school budgets or college budgets. We want to be sure that that whole continuum of education is there. So as a field, I think that it's looking at really all those different angles, the different sectors there. We know that a lot of children are in home-based settings or family and friends. I think making sure that those providers, your neighbor down the street who's watching 6 children every day for other families, that they have opportunities to access high-quality training as well. If those providers get shut out, I think we're just doing a real disservice to children and their futures. Mm-hmm. And so as a field, I think that those are the metrics that we need to keep an eye on. Personally, I'm just thrilled to see how much more attention is paid to this topic, that news articles are focused on it. President Obama mentioned pre-K in the State of the Union several times during his administration. Both Clinton and Trump campaigned on various early childhood issues in the campaign. That's new. That's never happened before. And so personally, I get a real thrill out of seeing the attention that's now being paid to these issues that wasn't a decade ago.
Okay. How can our community get more involved in some of the research policies?
So I think that, first of all, we need to make sure that early childhood isn't just an issue for people who have small children. There are still a lot of people who look at it and think, well, it's babysitting. Well, it's so much more than that. We know that these are the future doctors, engineers, lawyers of tomorrow are these children. And so really making sure that as a community, as a society, we're all invested in that success. Making sure that we care as much about early childhood as we do about elementary. I think that there's a lot of opportunities for community organizations to get involved, whether that's having, visitors for career day or having field trips to local establishments to sort of learn about the world around them. Children are such a blank slate, and so I think it goes both ways. We see a lot of volunteer programs in early childhood programs that I think can be really helpful to have people come in and read to the classrooms. And so that's at the local community level, with those individual programs. I think once you see the impact, see how children grow every day, it's easy to really start caring about the policy arena. Certainly, I encourage people to make sure this is something they're reading about in the news. If they're finding that they're not seeing anything about early childhood, try to find those articles. There's a lot of great groups on Twitter that you could also be following to get updates on this, because cuts that are made in this arena can really have a serious impact long term. Mm-hmm. And so we have to make sure that everyone understands the importance of it from the beginning.
Wow. You seem very confident right now about the research arena. Was that always the case?
Not all of the research is very clear cut on preschool, and I think it's important to be honest about that with early childhood. There's so many different programs and who they serve and how teachers are trained that I feel very strongly about the research, supporting the importance of early childhood, but there's always things that we can do better and learn more about. So I think it's important to understand that this isn't the silver bullet to fixing everything that's wrong with society. Sometimes we can get overzealous and talk about it that way. But that early childhood education, along with parenting support programs, along with, better health referrals and systems for children and families, along with addressing the issues of poverty more broadly, those are really what we need to do. So this early childhood is really, it's a large issue in my life, and I care very passionately about it, but it's a piece of a bigger puzzle for families and children.
Where can our listeners go to learn more about you?
Sure. So the best way to keep up with me is actually following me on Twitter. My handle is at Megan Carolan, MeganCarolan. In addition to which, you'll also get to hear me tweet about mass transit and gluten-free cooking. But I think that Twitter is an incredible medium for keeping up with news and organizations more broadly. It's where I share news that I'm reading, work that I'm working on, and just the things that I'm excited about more broadly.
Okay. As a new mother, what do you think is the most challenging area in early childhood development? Now you have an infant.
Yes, he's
And
10 weeks tomorrow.
10 weeks tomorrow. And as a new mother, can you share with other new mothers, like, what is the most challenging experience you're going through right now?
Oh my goodness. Big one. You know, right now it's nap time. But I think that what I've really learned so far in my 10 weeks of motherhood is that I do a lot of this professionally. I read about parenting, I read about education, I read about child development, and it's still really hard. There's so much the parents are left to figure out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
We've moved away from this village society that supports each other to, maybe your partner can take off a couple weeks to help with the baby. Maybe your mom lives nearby. I was very lucky to have both of those. I think the biggest challenge is just realizing that our society puts the burden on individual families to handle this on their own. And I would love to see us moving away from that more. So to new moms, I would say, reach out to your local moms group or get on an online community or see if your local faith-based organization has a meetup. Get out of the house because you're going to go crazy just sitting at home all day with the baby. And then it's never too early. Don't feel pressure. You shouldn't be doing flashcards with your kids. But, reading to the baby, talking to the baby, singing to the baby, it might seem silly at the time when he can't answer yet, but those are just stepping stones to a really robust educational career.
Yeah. And also as a parent, this is for all parents, the baby needs to learn your voice.
Yeah.
Get to know your voice, the sound of your voice, because that's communicating to the baby at a young age. They need to be comfortable with your voice, and that's part of learning, your voice. Yeah, go ahead.
When you see that moment of them recognizing your voice, it's really wonderful.
Yeah.
To realize that they know mommy, they know daddy, and they're listening because it's you.
Yeah.
Even if they don't understand you, I agree that's such a joy when you get to that point, and it's so important.
Yes. And if you listen closely, they do imitate the sounds that you make.
Yeah, it's pretty funny sometimes.
Yeah, it is. Yes. Can you tell us more about the experience being a new mother?
Oh my gosh, it is extraordinary and it is terrifying, and I want to be really honest about that. I love it, but it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and I've only been doing it for 10 weeks, so I can only imagine. For moms who have multiple kids or have adult kids now, I salute you. To single moms, I don't know how they do it, but it's tremendous to realize that my little boy has never experienced anything bad. He came into this world a blank slate, and it's our job to make him feel loved and secure every day.
Yes.
I want him to be smart and I want him to be successful, but in the end, I really just want him to be kind and a good person.
Yes, good. Yes, a caring person.
Yes, yeah.
And it's very important. You can probably share this with our parents also. Research does say that it's important that you hold your child.
Absolutely. You can't spoil the baby.
Yeah.
You just pick them up all the time.
That's a form of communication. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Now the research policy, do they have any current research about new mothers and how to provide for their babies?
Wow. There's so many resources sort of all over the place. There's some really great books out there, beyond the what to expect when you're expecting that can help parents with that. There's some really tremendous online communities too, because sometimes what you just need to know is that other parents are going through it too. There's also definitely some formal, what we call parenting support programs. People might have heard of some of these: Triple P, the Positive Parenting Program, the Incredible Years. These are things that people can go and Google. Some communities provide these resources. They're little workshop sessions or one-on-one sessions with trained people who can help sort of troubleshoot some issues, because sometimes you just don't know how to figure it out, especially with behavioral issues as children get older.
Yes.
You know that something isn't quite working, but you don't know how to address it. Maybe it's tantrums or biting. You know that's causing a problem. And so those are some organizations that I've done some work with that I really believe very strongly in their work. But to certainly maybe start with the faith-based community and local libraries if you're looking for an in-person experience, because they're going to really have their ear to the ground of what parents in the community are doing.
Okay, very good. Do you have anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
I want to say thank you for giving me the chance to get to talk about this. I'm so passionate about this work, and to really now witness it in my personal life has been tremendous. I want everyone to care about this, because we talk a lot about children are the future, and we have to believe that, and we have to put our resources there to really reflect that, and to help start kids off on the right foot as much as we can.
Yes, I agree with you. Now, what one lesson would you give to new parents?
Oh my gosh, am I qualified to answer that?
Yes, you are. You're a new mother.
Take all the help and ask for the help. And it's been a challenge for me. But if someone wants to come over and give you food, let them. If somebody wants to come over and do your dishes,
yes,
let them. And if your friend wants to come over and hold the baby while you take a nap, do that too. Humans weren't built to do this alone. We were supposed to be living in villages all together with our grandmothers and aunts surrounding us to help people who have done this before. So take the help. Don't be a hero. Just take it. And then when you have a chance down the line, pay it forward. When your kids are older and one of your girlfriends is pregnant or one of your cousins is pregnant, you have a responsibility to pay that forward and to be there for them.
Yes, I agree with you. That is some great information. Thank you so much, Megan Carolan, for sharing your information about policy research, being a new mother, and how to be loving and caring at the same time to young children. Young children need our love. They need our attention. So once again, thank you, and have a good motherhood.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It was great talking.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.